Have you ever noticed that you keep watching a movie you're not enjoying simply because you've already sat through 45 minutes of it?
Oh, absolutely. I do that all the time. I'll be 30 minutes into something, realize it's not for me, but I keep telling myself, well, I've already started it. I might as well finish it.
And what about something bigger, a relationship that you knew wasn't working months ago, but you stayed because you'd already invested 2 years? A job you stayed at because you'd been there for 5 years, even though you knew it wasn't right for you anymore?
Okay, I feel personally called out right now. Yes. I think everyone has at least one of those.
Welcome to Mind Decoded. I'm Dr. Ann.
And I'm Zach. Dr. Ann, I have a feeling you're about to tell me there's a name for this, and it's not just me being stubborn.
There absolutely is a name for it, and it is absolutely not just you being stubborn. It's one of the most well-documented cognitive biases in psychology. It's called the sunk cost fallacy.
Sunk cost fallacy. I've heard the term before, but I'm not sure I could explain it to someone if they asked.
Then let me try. A sunk cost is any cost, money, time, effort, that has already been spent and cannot be recovered. The word sunk is important here. It's gone. You cannot get it back. The fallacy part is when we let that unrecoverable investment influence our current decisions, when rationally it shouldn't.
Can you give me an example that isn't about a movie?
Absolutely. Picture this. You buy a ticket to a concert. The ticket cost $80. The night of the concert, you're exhausted. You had a terrible day. You have a headache. Your friend cancels. Every logical reason tells you to stay home, but you go anyway because you already paid for the ticket.
And that sounds completely reasonable when you say it out loud, but I also know from the way you're saying it that it's not.
Here's what's interesting. In the rational sense, the $80 is gone regardless of what you do. Whether you go to the concert or stay home, you do not get that $80 back. So the only question that should influence your decision is, will I enjoy this concert tonight? And if the answer is no, the rational decision is to stay home. But most people go and they suffer through a concert they didn't have the energy for, simply because they already paid.
Okay, but I think most people would still argue that feels logical. Like, I already spent the money, I don't want to waste it.
And that is the fallacy. You're not wasting the money by staying home. The money is already wasted the moment you bought the ticket. The only thing you're doing by going is adding a bad experience on top of a lost $80.
Huh, I have never framed it that way. So the money is already gone.
Exactly. The cost is sunk. It's in the past. It should not factor into your decision. And yet it does. It influences almost all of us. This is what makes the sunk cost fallacy such a fascinating cognitive bias. It's incredibly consistent across cultures, ages, and levels of education.
So has this been studied, like actual research?
Very extensively, the foundational work was done by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, two psychologists whose research on decision making essentially created the field of behavioral economics. They published a landmark study in 1979 called Prospect Theory, an analysis of decision under risk. In that paper, they described something called loss aversion.
Loss aversion.
The core idea is that losses hurt us about twice as much as equivalent gains feel good. Losing $20 feels significantly worse than the pleasure of finding $20.
That I recognize immediately. I can think of a time I lost $20 from my pocket and was upset about it for way longer than what makes sense.
Loss aversion is the deeper psychological mechanism underneath sunk cost fallacy. When we stop investing in something we've already put resources into, our brain registers that as a loss. And because losses are so painful, we will do almost anything to avoid that feeling. So we continue. We throw good money after bad.
But the money or the time or the effort is already lost, right? You just said that.
I did. And rationally, you know that, but emotionally, your brain operates differently. Your brain treats a loss as something that hasn't fully happened yet, as though you can still avoid it by continuing to invest. There's a study that really demonstrates this beautifully. In the 1980s, researchers Hal Arkiz and Catherine Bloomer ran an experiment where they gave participants a scenario. Imagine you've spent $100 on a ski trip to Michigan. Then you find out there's a much better ski trip in Wisconsin for $50. You buy that ticket too, but then you realize both trips are on the same weekend. You cannot go to both. Which one do you choose?
I'm guessing most people chose the more expensive trip, even though the cheaper one was better.
Exactly. Most participants chose the Michigan trip, the $100 trip, even though they knew the Wisconsin trip would be more enjoyable. Because they had invested more money in the Michigan trip, they didn't want to waste that investment.
But the money is already spent either way.
Exactly. So the rational choice is to go to the trip you'd enjoy more, but that's not what people do. And what's even more fascinating is that this effect gets stronger the more you've invested. If the first trip cost $200 instead of $100, even more people would choose it.
Wait, so the more I've already lost, the more likely I am to keep losing.
That's exactly right. And I want to say something here because I think it's important. When you hear this described, it's very easy to think, oh, that's a personal failing. I'm bad at making smart decisions. But the science tells a very different story. This is how your brain is wired. Loss aversion is a survival mechanism.
Hang on. Loss aversion is a survival mechanism? How?
Think about it from an evolutionary perspective. For our ancestors, losing food, losing shelter, losing safety, those losses could mean death. Gains were nice, but losses were existential. Your brain learned to avoid losses at almost any cost because, in the ancestral environment, losses had life or death consequences.
So my brain is still running software from hundreds of thousands of years ago?
Essentially, yes. Your brain's loss aversion system is ancient, and in the modern world it often misfires, because losing $100 on a ticket is not a life or death situation, but your brain doesn't fully know that. It treats it with the same intensity.
That is both comforting and a little alarming. Comforting because it's not a character flaw. Alarming because my brain is apparently terrible at modern math.
Your brain is not bad at math. Your brain is good at ancient survival. And that mismatch is what we're exploring today. This is the sunk cost fallacy, a cognitive shortcut that made sense in a different world but often leads us astray in this one.
So where else does this show up? Because I can see it everywhere now.
Everywhere. Relationships, careers, education, business decisions. Think about any long-term project. You're 6 months into something, you realize it's not working. Your gut tells you to stop. But you think, I've already put in 6 months, I can't quit now.
I literally just did this. Last month, a few months ago, I started a side project. I built a website, I spent weekends on it. After about 4 months, it became clear that the project wasn't going anywhere, the market wasn't there, my heart wasn't in it, but I kept working on it for another month and a half because I thought, I've already put in 4 months. If I quit now, all that time was wasted.
That is a textbook sunk cost fallacy moment.
And I knew, even as I was doing it, that it didn't make sense. But I couldn't bring myself to stop.
Because stopping felt like admitting failure. It felt like losing. And your brain, ancient and protective, said, keep going. Maybe it'll work out.
It didn't work out, by the way.
It rarely does. And that's the heartbreaking part of sunk cost fallacy. It doesn't just cost you your initial investment, it costs you all the additional resources you pour in afterward, hoping to turn things around.
So what do I do? How do I stop myself from falling into this again?
The first step is awareness. Just knowing the sunk cost fallacy exists changes something in your brain. When you recognize the pattern, you start to catch it in the moment, and that's the most powerful thing.
Okay. But recognition alone doesn't always stop me. I can recognize I'm doing it and still do it.
That's honest, and it's true for most people. So let me give you a practical strategy. The next time you're deciding whether to continue something, ask yourself one question. If I had not already invested anything in this, no time, no money, no effort, would I choose to start it today?
If I had not already invested anything, would I start it today?
That question bypasses your sunk cost entirely. It forces you to evaluate the decision based solely on what's in front of you right now. Future potential, current enjoyment, present value.
If I had asked myself that question with my side project, the answer would have been a clear no. I would never start that project today.
And that's exactly the answer you need. When the answer to that question is no, and you're still continuing, you're in sunk cost territory.
That's a remarkably clean way to think about it. I'm going to write that down.
And here's another layer. There's research by a psychologist named Ting Zhang at Harvard Business School that suggests we're also biased toward continuing things because we underestimate how much we'll adapt to change.
What does that mean?
When you're in the middle of something, a project, a job, a relationship, your brain anchors to your current situation. It thinks, this is what my life is. It's hard to imagine being happy without it. So it feels incredibly risky to walk away. But the research shows that most people adapt remarkably well after ending something they were invested in.
So we fear the loss of this thing more than we should, and we underestimate how quickly we'll be fine without it.
Exactly, which makes the decision to continue even more seductive. You think, if I quit, I'll feel terrible. I'll regret it forever. But very often, within a few weeks or months, you've moved on and feel relieved.
I have definitely experienced that. The relief of finally quitting, it always comes later than I expect, but it always comes.
That relief is your brain recognizing something your conscious mind couldn't fully process in the moment. And honestly, once you understand this mechanism, it changes how you judge yourself for the decisions you've made.
I'm sitting here thinking about some of my bigger decisions, past relationships, old jobs, and I can see the sunk cost fallacy woven through all of them.
Most of us can, and the point is not to feel bad about it. The point is that you now have a tool. You can catch it next time.
But what about situations where you genuinely can't tell, where it looks like it might turn around? How do you know if you're rationally persisting or if you've fallen into the sunk cost trap?
That is the million-dollar question, and it is genuinely hard. Because persistence looks a lot like sunk cost from the outside. In fact, some of the most successful people in history persisted through things that looked hopeless.
So how do you tell the difference?
A helpful distinction comes from the work of decision researcher Annie Duke, a former professional poker player. She distinguishes between outcome-based thinking and process-based thinking. A good decision can have a bad outcome. A bad decision can have a good outcome. The key is whether your decision-making process was sound.
Explain that in more practical terms.
If you are persisting because of new information that suggests things could change, that's rational persistence. I've learned that the market is shifting. I have new data. There is a real reason to continue.
Okay.
But if you are persisting purely because you've already invested time or money, without any new information that changes the outlook, that is sunk cost. So the question becomes, why am I continuing? Is there a new reason, or am I just trying to avoid feeling like I've lost what I already put in?
A new reason versus avoiding loss. That is genuinely helpful. I can use that.
I'm glad, and here's something I want you to try.
I'm ready.
The next time you catch yourself in a sunk cost moment, maybe you're in a meeting at work that's been going nowhere for 45 minutes, but you feel like you have to stay until the end. Just get up and leave.
Just leave?
Just leave. Walk out. You'll feel uncomfortable for about 30 seconds. And then you'll feel free. That little act will train your brain to understand that quitting is not a disaster. It's a decision.
I'm going to do that. Next meeting that goes nowhere, I'm going to stand up, say I'm not getting value from this anymore, and walk out.
Do it. Report back to me.
I will, and this has genuinely shifted something for me today. I've always known I do this, but I never had a clean mental framework for stopping it.
And that's exactly what this podcast is for. We want you to leave each episode with one real tool, one thing you can actually use in your life.
Before we wrap, can I ask something that I think a lot of listeners are probably thinking?
Of course.
Does this mean we should never persist when things are hard? Because there's a real tension here. Persistence is a virtue. Grit is celebrated, and sunk cost fallacy says, don't keep investing. How do you navigate that?
That tension is real, and it's important. Here's how I think about it. Persistence is about continuing toward a goal that matters to you, even when it's difficult. Sunk cost is about continuing because of what you've already lost. The difference is the motivation.
So if my motivation is the goal, it's persistence?
If your motivation is the goal, it's persistence. If your motivation is the fear of losing your past investment, it's sunk cost. Ask yourself, am I doing this because it matters to me? Or am I doing this because I can't stand the thought that I've already wasted time?
Am I doing this because it matters or because I can't stand the thought of wasted time? That is a very pointed question.
It is, and it's a question worth sitting with because the honest answer can be uncomfortable, but it can also be liberating.
I think that's a great note to end on. But before we go, I want to say something to our listeners. If you've recognized yourself in this episode, and I certainly did, please know that this is not about being weak-willed or bad at decisions. This is literally how your brain is wired, and now that you know, you have power over it.
Beautifully said. And that sense of discovery, of understanding yourself a little better, that's why we do this. So here's your one takeaway for today. The next time you're struggling with a decision about whether to continue or quit, ask yourself, if I had not already invested anything, would I choose to start this today?
And if the answer is no,
Then you have your answer. Walk away and feel the relief.
thank you, Dr. Ann. This was another episode that made me look in the mirror.
Thank you, Zach. And thank you to all of you listening. If this episode helped you see something about your own decision making, share it with someone. You might help them save themselves from their next sunk cost trap.
We release new episodes every day. If you want to understand your own brain a little better each morning, hit subscribe and leave us a review. It really helps other people find the show.
Until next time, keep decoding.